Hello. Today, we are talking about the real villain in modern love stories, dating apps. Over the past couple of years, I've had a little here, a little there with dating apps for the first time. I shouldn't say the first time. When dating apps first came on the scene, I downloaded one for like 2 weeks, but I don't really count that. This is the first time in my life where I've intentionally gone on to dating apps looking to find the love of my life. Now, I have had several friends at this point find the love of their lives, usually on Bumble, which I don't even have. So maybe that's my first mistake. But they've gotten married, they have kids. So there are success stories. We're not going to be bashing them too hard in this episode, but we are going to get into some of the pitfalls, if you will, when dealing with dating, not only on dating apps, but just modern dating and the state of things. Our modern tools for connection often reinforce our deepest wounds or trigger our deepest wounds. And depending on what your particular brand of wounding is, that can show up in different ways. I want to kind of talk about the culture shift in dating and what you could call hookup culture now. Before we had apps, people more often met through family, friends, social settings, church, shared community circles, and this added a level of responsibility in dating where people had friends in common and family members and not family members. I don't mean you're related, but I mean they might know your family. Guys, I'm just now having my coffee. Relax. But they had people in common with you that they were more concerned about letting down, if you will. They were concerned about how they might appear. They were concerned about their reputation. And I think because of that, there might have been a little more integrity, a little more consideration when dating new people. Maybe you'd go out once or twice, and if you aren't feeling it, go ahead and cut it off because you know it's not going anywhere and you don't want to lead the person on and then have your friend come back to you and say, "What are you doing, crazy?" Obviously, it's not like that never happened, but I feel like meeting people who you have no shared background with online opens up a lot more room for people to treat you more flippantly and not have as much social blowback or social consequences is a better word. You maybe had met them in person and already knew you had a spark of chemistry versus today we have this kind of almost cross between a blind date. Technically, you've seen photos of them, but a lot of the time you don't know what they're actually going to look like when you show up. You have no idea what their voice sounds like or, how you're going to converse with each other and if you're going to have a rapport. There's more and less risk in both situations in different ways, but it feels scarier, at least I think, when you're going into a situation and you have no idea what this person is going to be like. It seems like people's online behavior and even behavior that begins online has such a disconnect with real life consequences that people are not treating it as intentionally as they used to be. I think with apps like Tinder, online dating became less about finding the one for you and more about finding who's nearby you right now. Tinder launched in 2012 and it gamified dating in a way. This swipe culture versus intentional browsing on a website like eHarmony, it turned it into a dopamine-driven swipe fest. It leaves everybody just looking for the next best thing all the time. It turns dating into slot machines. It's almost as if it was just like, let's make people as disposable as possible. So to function on modern dating apps, we're more focused on a surface level presentation. So what do you look like in your pictures? Who can make the wittiest one-liner on their profile? And you get this instant gratification of swiping and matching with a bunch of people really quickly. It feeds people's low-level ego. And a lot of the time you'll match with people and you never even speak to them. And it's such a weird dynamic. And it creates this infinite choice illusion, which makes us think we can always do better. We can always upgrade. We can always move on. And so people tend to commit less and fewer people invest deeply. They're dating more people at once. They're seeing maybe one little thing they don't like about somebody and going, there's probably someone better than this. And people who have more wounding around dating are more likely, in my opinion, to constantly look for that instant gratification. And then when any sort of reality strikes, and I think this has been historically associated with men more so, it's like whenever they're confronted with responsibility or the reality of dating, it's easier for them to just go, no thanks, and then go back and get that instant gratification and date someone else for a couple weeks or a few months. And so people who are emotionally unavailable can use dating apps to self-soothe and distract themselves and validate themselves, or simply pass time when they're bored and in bed scrolling and they want the gratification of knowing, ooh, somebody saw my picture or my profile and they liked me. So we must pose the deeper question in relation to freedom from old relationship standards. Are we really more liberated in this environment, or are we just more detached? I think it's pretty obvious what the answer is. I dealt with someone like this who, to use a now commonly used phrase, love bombed me, and then found out the person was doing that to tons of girls, literally tons, and using it as validation for himself without any real intention of settling down, and was not upfront about that at all. And me, as someone who likes to psychoanalyze people, really wanted to know why. What is going through your head that allows you to justify that to yourself? And I think people that do this either have convinced themselves somehow that what they're doing isn't deceptive, or they just don't care. They don't care if it is deceptive. It has to be one of those two, because there's really no other option. They are wounded and need validation so badly, but at the same time are so scared of true intimacy that they're not able to handle others in a morally responsible way. And when you don't have people in common to vet anyone, it becomes so much easier for these types of people to take advantage of tons of people, because there's no one warning you, hey, you know what? I've seen his behavior and I don't think he's looking for anything serious. Or, oh, he said that to you. Well, he says that to everyone. You don't have anyone to tell you that. And thankfully, there are things like Facebook groups and apps now. These apps have arisen out of a need for some sort of community of people to come together and go, hey, I went out with that guy and he's a pathological liar or like a serial cheater. Or sadly, a lot of them, oh, that guy's married. Someone has to tell you that. And if you don't have mutual friends, who's going to tell you? So I think that's a great thing that some of these communities have arisen in order for people to warn each other about some of these people who are just rampaging unhealed through the world and taking advantage of others. So, I mean, let's go a little deeper into why these types flock to apps. So if dating apps aren't designed for real emotional connection, why are so many people on them? Especially people who seem the least likely to get into a serious relationship. As we talked about, dating apps reward detachment and surface level interactions. So it's really the perfect storm for avoidant types or emotionally unavailable people that prioritize looks, people that prioritize surface level conversation and instant decisions, and don't have to have any accountability or even context around the situation. That kind of low effort, low risk environment is a dream for avoidantly attached people. You get all the attention you want that validates you without having to have any of the vulnerability required for a real relationship. At the same time, people who are more anxiously attached also get drawn in because they crave connection, validation, and the apps offer this to them in short bursts. It gives them that dopamine hit that they're looking for. So if we're looking specifically at each attachment style, an avoidant person would love the distance offered to them by apps, just enough connection for them to flirt or feel wanted without the mess of emotional closeness. While anxious users feel consumed by the ambiguity and crave reassurance and attention and the signs that they're wanted, and it gives them a little bit of that, but they're not getting the deep validation that they really need. They're getting it in short bursts, though, so a lot of the time anxious people can be drawn to apps because if they're not getting that from someone else, at least they can have a little bit of it. And of course, disorganized or fearful avoidantly attached people usually live in the chaotic loop of extremes where they go back and forth between these two things. So they often crave closeness, but they fear it at the same time. So the apps give them a chaotic buffet of extremes: romantic highs, painful rejections, ghosting, love bombing, etc. So it keeps them emotionally spinning and weirdly hooked. And that volatility feels like love. And for secure people, we won't leave you out. Secure people either opt out of dating apps quickly or they use them intentionally and with boundaries. So a secure person using a dating app would look like they don't last very long on there unless they're using them with clear intentions and boundaries. So they're not playing games when they get on there. When they sense emotional misalignment, they'll move on quickly. So they treat the apps like a tool and not a lifestyle, not a place to go get validation, but a place to actually go potentially meet someone. They're going to try to move off the apps as fast as possible when they meet someone that they feel like they have a real connection with. And honestly, we should all aspire to be more securely attached. So that's a good roadmap for what using dating apps should look like. And just a little bit more about the science angle of this. Our dopamine systems are activated by intermittent reinforcement. So that's like what you get from using a slot machine or a swipe. It's the same reward cycle as gambling. You don't know when you're going to match with someone, who will message you back, or if the conversation will go anywhere. And that unpredictability lights up your brain's dopamine system. So it hooks you into the chase. It becomes about getting that. You're kind of like a little rat in an experiment, okay? These dating apps are experimenting on you. You're their little rat, and they're having you push a little button so you can receive some nicotine or cocaine or something in your water. And then you never know when it's coming, so you just keep hitting the button over and over again. So you don't really have to be so hard on yourself, I guess is what I'm saying, because it's not really your fault if you feel addicted. It's literally designed to be addicting. The system was designed to keep you chasing. It's not designed for deep connection. Once again, that doesn't mean you can't use it as a tool for this, but you have to be very intentional with how you use it. A lot of times you connect with people on a dating app, and then I heard this term orbiting, which is where it's like, oh, maybe you chat for a second or you connect and it never really goes anywhere, but they followed you on social media and now they just watch all of your stories and they like things, but you never have any further interaction or connection than that. That's called orbiting. I love that term. And with this kind of dynamic, your brain, instead of going, do I connect deeply with this person? Now you're thinking things like, should I wait 3 hours to text back? Like you're lowering the bar. You're lowering the bar because a lot of the time what you come across, the bar is so low, it's like you're not even at, are we building something real? You're thinking, did they at least text me back today or this week? Like the bar is so sadly low. This is definitely something I struggle with. I'm an empathetic person, and it's very easy for me to see someone and want to know why they do the things they do. And somehow I think that finding out why they do the things they do is going to help change things. Oh, they're not acting as a secure, healthy partner would treat someone. That must mean that something happened to them, and I need to figure out what that was so that maybe I could help them. Like when you do this, though, you start lowering the bar, and I definitely have done that. You start thinking, am I expecting too much from other people, like to just be secure and communicate normally? And you start thinking, like, is there something wrong with me? What is going on? But the reality is you are experiencing being on the other end of emotional unavailability way more than has been normal, I would say, in the past. Just by pure numbers, you're connecting with way more people than, has been normal in the past. And since dating apps, I feel disproportionately attract people who are emotionally unavailable, you're being exposed to a lot of emotionally unavailable people and you're having to get through the weeds. And if you're using it intentionally, it's pretty hard work. And of course, it doesn't always have to be. Some people just get lucky and find someone good early on and great. That's awesome. Apps in a lot of ways can hurt your self-esteem, even if you are secure, but they make you hyper aware every day of who's choosing you and who's not. And that's happening all day, every day. And when you're in the real world, you're just living your life, having normal interactions with people, and you're not experiencing that. So I feel like when you're on dating apps for a long time, it creates this imbalance, it's not reality as far as people rejecting you or accepting you or whatever all day long. It can affect your feeling of worth, obviously, but it can also just make you hyper aware of how you're coming off, which can be so draining. And you may have heard this before, but a lot of the time you can confuse the anxiety you start to experience in these situations as chemistry. Those butterflies you get when you meet somebody you like are a lot of the time not easy to distinguish from anxiety you're feeling because someone is not being secure or emotionally available to you. Both of those things trigger your nervous system, so it's hard to discern sometimes what exactly is happening. You might think you have this incredible chemistry with this person, but really they're just setting off all your alarm bells, but it's making you feel so much that you think, oh man, I really feel strongly for this person. Basically, constant exposure to this kind of casual detachment from others teaches you to distrust your own needs. Because you're going, I have these needs and what I think is healthy in a relationship and what a secure person should act like in a relationship. And 80% of people who I'm meeting, or whatever it is, 90 or 75, I don't know, whatever it is for you, percent of people aren't doing these things. So are my standards too high? You might think, okay, I need to stop asking for clarity, or I need to shrink my expectations so that I don't seem needy. But it's good to remember, and this is how a secure person would think, someone else's connection with you has nothing to do with your worth. And just to know in your head that I'm very likely, when I use a tool like a dating app, to be exposed to people who are emotionally unavailable to maybe even a disproportionate degree. Therefore, I will just be aware of that. But that does not mean I'm going to change and lower my standards. I'm still going to know going into this what a healthy relationship should look like and what I need from another person. And I will use the tool until I find that person, or until I'm tired of using the tool and I want to go and find someone in real life. So define what you want before you get onto an app. And I think this is just a first step that a lot of people don't do. They think, oh, I want to meet someone. They don't think much about it. Oh, all my friends have used dating apps. Some of them have met people, so I'll just download it right now and I'll just see what happens. But really take time to think about it. What are you looking for? What kind of behavior are you okay with and not okay with? For me, if someone isn't asking me out pretty quickly, I lose interest because I feel like that person is not intentional. They are using the app to have pen pals or whatever, and they're not necessarily serious about, hey, I want to meet you in person and see what our chemistry is actually like. So that's a boundary for me. And you'll see too, some people, and of course, some people are not honest about this. With the experience I told you about earlier, his profile definitely didn't say, I don't know what I want in a relationship. It said he was looking for a long-term relationship. And that was a lie. But a lot of people will directly put on there, I don't know what I want. And that for me is always a no. So if you put, you don't know what you're looking for in a relationship, that's a no for me. Because why are you on here? Whatever. If that's really how you feel, and maybe someone else feels that way too, and you guys can go off and figure things out together, good for you. That's not what I'm looking for. So you need to think about that. And before you create your profile, before you start swiping and going, maybe I could be okay with that. Oh, his picture's really cute. Maybe I'm okay if he doesn't know what he wants in a relationship. You know what I mean? Define these things before you get on there so that you keep your standards. It'll help you have clarity on what you want. And so your decision making will be better when you're swiping and messaging with people. And if you're anxious and you're craving love, don't lie to yourself and say you're just seeing what's out there and you don't really care. You're just curious because you're not being true to what you really want. And so that's going to create confusion not only for you, but for them. You're going to create confusion and heartbreak if you go into this confused. Another thing is, if you feel like your self-esteem is lower than normal, or you're too busy to really engage effectively with other people, that's a good time to take a pause. It's okay to take a pause. Watch for emotional burnout. If you start to feel numb or jaded, or like you're not enough for anyone, or you're just discouraged, that might be a time to take a break and recenter yourself before you start again. And during that time off, pour into yourself, nourish you, hang out with your friends, make time for creativity and quiet and positive reflection, and go to church and do your affirmations. And I don't mean this from a cheesy self-help perspective, but pour into yourself. Make sure that you're always having that self-love and reminding yourself that what is meant for you truly is going to find you, and your worth does not depend on how other people are treating you online. And a lot of the time you need to disconnect in order to do that, for a minute at least. And just remember that a dating app is a tool. It's not a replacement for real connection. They aren't inherently evil, these apps, but they're not designed to protect you. They're not designed to protect your heart. Your job is to protect your heart. That's your job. So set rules for yourself, whether that's time limits on how long you're going to swipe, or only messaging with intention and not scrolling out of boredom, only getting on at a certain time, and making that clear to other people too, if you want to. I would also say, and this is a mistake I've made, don't confuse availability, like physical availability, with emotional availability or alignment. Their timing and eagerness might match up with yours in the beginning, but either you may not be a great fit, or they may not be truly emotionally available. So a lot of the time that takes several dates or even several months of dating to figure out where somebody really is and to watch their behavior versus what they're telling you. And so another good rule to set for yourself, and obviously we have some control over our emotional responses, but a lot of the time we can get attached before we really want to. But I think it's just important to remind yourself that, oh, you might be really feeling this in the beginning. You might be daydreaming about all these things that could happen with you and this person, but over time, you still need to give it time to see their actions, their consistency, and really assess whether you are compatible. It's good to remind yourself what dating is for and reconnect with that. It's not just for chemistry or excitement. A true, secure, healthy, long-term relationship is about shared values, emotional safety, and compatibility. And once again, it takes time. It takes actions. It takes sometimes showing up when you don't feel like it. It takes vulnerability. And all those things take time to suss out. So I know a lot of times finding love in 2025 or wherever you are listening to this means swimming upstream, or at least it feels like swimming upstream a lot of the time. But that's okay. It can be easy to get discouraged, especially when social media is bombarding us. I get this a lot on my feed. Just negative relationship stories because they get more engagement. So they're saying, I caught my husband cheating on me, or blah, blah, blah. Or like the next one is, that man doesn't like you. Like getting all this negative input, it can really start to wear you down and just think, man, the state of things is not good today with relationships. But you have to remember that the internet algorithms often reward these negative stories. Half the time, they're not even true. Just remember that you're in control of your life. You're in control of when you decide to get online and get offline. There are tons of people still finding love and doing it intentionally, whether in person or online using these tools. And I think because of a lot of this noise and chaos, people are starting to unplug and be more intentional. I'm noticing an uptick in people saying, I'm dumbing down my phone. I'm limiting my screen time, whatever it is. I'm doing more things in real life. And they're trying to be intentional versus mindlessly consuming things because they're noticing all the negative effects. But while you are navigating it, you may meet some bums along the way. And you can listen to this song. And maybe it will be cathartic to you to sing along to when you're meeting bums on the way to finding your next great love. See you next time.
Light creeping through the door, shirt wrinkled on the floor, feels like a memory before you even leave.
Okay, this week's Loveline question. Do women even go on dating apps to actually meet anyone, or am I just too lame? First of all, you're not lame. And the fact that you're even asking this tells me you're probably one of the people who's actually using dating apps to try to meet someone. Because, yes, women do go on dating apps hoping to meet someone. But here's the part that doesn't get talked about a lot. A lot of people on dating apps are there for very different reasons at the same time. Some people are genuinely on there and open to connection, and some are bored, and some are healing, and some are looking for validation, and some are trying to avoid being alone. So, if you're always showing up with clarity and intention, it can start to feel like maybe you're out of place because why isn't everyone else doing this? Did everyone else get a different memo? That doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means you're encountering a system that doesn't reward sincerity very well. When someone who's actually ready to connect keeps running into ambiguity or inconsistency, it's very easy to turn that inward and go, what's wrong with me? Why does this keep happening? But a lot of the time, what you're experiencing isn't rejection, it's misalignment. These people are not in the same place as you. And so just because you're on a dating app, unfortunately, doesn't mean everybody else on there has the same intentions as you or is in the same place as you or able to even sustain a real relationship. So the people who are on there that linger or waffle or disappear or send you mixed signals, they're not often confused about you. They're confused about themselves. They don't know what they want. So instead of asking yourself, am I too lame, and putting it on yourself, I would gently encourage you to ask, is this environment actually designed for how I want to connect? And if the answer is no, that doesn't mean you have to give it up. It just means that you use the apps as a tool, not as a verdict on whether you're worthy. You're not lame. You're just likely very intentional and more intentional than maybe a lot, if not most, other people on the apps. So that's where you kind of have to decide, am I open to being on here and realizing that not everybody is going to have the same intentions as me, and I'm going to have to weed through people and be awake to what other people are looking for? Or are these not for me at all, and I would rather just meet someone organically? Either way, you're putting yourself at risk, and it has nothing to do with whether you're lame or not. It has to do with connecting with other people is always a risk. There can always be misalignment. It can come day one, it can come day 532. You know what I mean? Unfortunately. But hopefully, some of the things I already talked about in this episode will help you discern and weed some of that out. And once again, it has nothing to do with you being too lame. It has to do with the fact that you, yay, are likely very intentional and ready to date. And I have faith, and I hope you do too, that you can meet someone, whether it's on the apps or off the apps, and you will be able to discern based on their behavior and actions over time whether they are as committed or as dedicated or invested as you are. When you meet someone who's on the same page as you, it won't feel confusing. It will feel clear. And that is true. If you've got a love question, a pattern you can't seem to break, or something you need clarity on, this is your sign to submit a question to the Attachment Theory Love Line. You can find the link in the show notes and my bio anytime. If this episode is resonating with you, I'd love for you to follow the show and share it with someone who might need it. Each episode is inspired by a song from my upcoming record, Attachment Theory. You can find the music wherever you listen, and follow me on socials at Aubrie Sellers.